reports, whether that's on a monthly basis or if you're working on a project at the end of the project or during that time, quarterly reviews, anything like this in terms of sending client reports. Obviously, it's a really good opportunity to show the value of the work you do, educate your client on the process of what you've been doing and the results, and also with some recommendations of next steps. Now, in terms of how they should look, I think it does make sense to have a template. I remember when I first started freelancing in marketing, digital marketing, and I was creating bespoke reports every time, and it was really a waste of my time, and the time would be better spent actually on pulling the right data, analyzing the data and giving some recommendations for the client rather than trying to go through and create a report every time that was bespoke. So I do think it's good to have a base template, and this can be from your experience. You can speak to some of maybe your mentors or colleagues. You can ping me a question on social media. I'll be very happy to answer that from doing probably thousands of reports now, to be honest. And then you want to get to the point where you have a really good template, a good framework of the key things to include in a report. Now, if it's a new client, what I always like to do is send them the report that I create and then say, these are the things that, in my experience that I think are reviews. However, the reports are for you. So let me know if there's anything more you want to see or anything you feel is missing or anything you'd like to elaborate on. So that's the key thing is ask the client, what do they want? What do they want from the reports? Are the reports you're creating useful for them? I think it's not great if a client just gets a report in their inbox, pings through it and moves on. You actually want them to engage and read and learn from it, because that enhances your client relationship and shows the value of what you're doing. Now, one of the simple ways I quite like to run reports is, and this is one of the best ways to understand from your own perspective and also to come across as transparent, is to go through what's gone well in the month, what potentially hasn't been as effective, and the key thing is what have we learned from both of those things and what we're going to do now. What are the recommendations? I remember having early reports in my days that I produced and being presented with reports from suppliers where it just went through all the data, and the kind of big elephant in the room, the missing question was, so what? What are we going to do about it? It's great to have all the data in the world, but what are we going to do about it? What does this data tell us that we're going to learn from and make improvements on in terms of future campaigns or future projects and activities? So that's a kind of a good little framework, is to have, what went well from what we did, what wasn't quite as effective, and this is what we've learned from it, and now we're going to go ahead and implement these projects. I used to really love doing report meetings in person. That's not always, particularly in the current circumstances, not always viable. And actually the travel time and everything probably wasn't worth it. But it is quite good to have a conversation about the reports. I tend not to just like to send the report in a PDF format and let the client read it. Obviously they get a copy and they can read it in their own time, absolutely. But I quite like to have a verbal discussion about the course, about the report. So that's going through and saying, what did you think about that? Try and understand, get their feelings. Did they realize what we were doing? Do they understand the process? Have they got any key pertinent questions that we can answer live? One of the other things I might do as well is use a tool like Loom, is that when I send the report over, potentially for preview before the meeting, is just do a quick recording of the screenshot of going over the report and just give my sort of verbal explanations of each of the steps. Only takes 5 or 10 minutes, ping that over to the client, and it brings a lot of these things to life, which particularly if they're not a professional in what you're doing for them, which they're probably not if they're using you as an agency or a freelancer or a consultant for whatever service it is, bringing that stuff to life for them can really help them understand the reports. So they don't need to go on for pages. Get across the key points, ask the clients for feedback the first time you send a report, and then adapt from there and present the information that they want. And make sure you have some actionable recommendations as a result of the report, because that's the key thing. And that can enhance your longer term relationship, because once they see the recommendations and they're pleased with them, they're going to want to use you to implement those as well. So that's my 2 pence worth on reporting.